2023, we will have officially been holding the Hive meeting for 10 years. Every single month having held a Hive meeting since February of 2013. And I remember the first time that we held a meeting here, and it was not too long after the building opened, and right outside where we were having the meeting was this beautiful mosaic with a honeycomb and bees and all of these things, and we were like, wow, this was certainly meant to be. So thank you so much. We really appreciate Crosby Wellness Center opening up their doors and making us feel welcome here, so thank you.
Okay, well, grab this. I'm Clayton Farrar. It's wonderful to be here tonight. Welcome to the Hive. If you have never come here before, this is our think and do tank that we created to crowdsource ideas from the community. From there, we create action projects every single month out in the community doing and accomplishing different things. From there, with our metrics and key performance indicators, we study the action projects, evolve them into programs, from programs into social enterprises with revenue models, and then create jobs for people in communities. And one of our case studies of this was our creation of fleet farming. If you have not heard of fleet farming or are interested in that, you can check out a documentary about us on Disney+. It's called Paris to Pittsburgh. National Geographic came and filmed it about our work, and you'll see some familiar faces in there as well. So we are very excited to be here. Now, we are a nonprofit organization, so that means that we're united underneath a mission, right? And for us, that mission is to develop ideas, fund action, and scale solutions that solves the world's most pressing problems around environmental sustainability and also social issues as well. We do this by, again, launching these different types of action projects in the community around energy, water, food, waste, and ecology. Well, believe it or not, we've been doing this since 2008, having started as a student club right at UCF. Well, since then, we've grown as an organization. We've now spread to 32 different countries around the world. We've worked with 2 former US presidents, Pope Francis, a multitude of companies around the world that are trying to advance sustainability, literally hundreds of academic institutions around the world, as we bring our different cadre of projects, programs, and so on to their campuses. So again, this concept of the Hive, bringing the community together, that's you all tonight, right? General public, developing these environmental action projects. We raise funding and fund these projects, right? Make them possible. Then mobilizing volunteers for boots on the ground work. And after all, that is what we're going to do tonight. Energy, water, food, waste, and ecology. Why did we choose this? Well, we actually predated the SDGs in us coming up with this by a number of years. If you're not familiar with the SDGs, we'll touch on those in a little bit. But we wanted to break down sustainability into themes. And if we could do that, we used energy, water, food, waste, and ecology as this kind of encompassing framework to be able to not only make sustainability relatable, but also not make it overwhelming, right? Because sustainable development, after all, encompasses so much. So that was very important for us. And as the world came together to create the Sustainable Development Goals, we happened to be at those meetings. I'm a UN delegate. Ideas for Us is a United Nations accredited NGO, it's called. And we were at the Rio Plus 20 meeting in 2012 where the SDGs were proposed. So our framework, we were able to adapt and utilize to incorporate all of the SDGs. Well, why do all of this stuff? Well, there's been a real problem, I would say, probably at least for the last 3 decades, possibly longer, where you have this advocacy-only focus to environmentalism. You could walk out into any general public setting with a camera and a microphone and ask people off the street, what do they think are some major environmental problems? And most people will be able to list 3, 4, 5 major environmental problems facing the planet. But when you ask them what could be done about those, or what are they doing, or what are people that they know in their community doing, usually then the answers get kind of fudgy. So we realized that environmental action matters tremendously, boots on the ground environmental action. So this creates the why behind what it is that we're doing. We want to see more boots on the ground environmental action that takes into consideration the full breadth of sustainable development. That's an economic benefit, a social benefit, and an environmental benefit. So of course, as a 501c3, we thrive off of donations, right? We have a lot of different ways in which as an organization we raise money. We just had our fundraiser called the Bright Ideas Solutions Showcase. Just show of hands if you happened to be there that night. If you would just raise your hands, it was a pretty special night. A couple of us in the room here, fantastic. That was our first big fundraiser since 2019. So it was wonderful to get back into the room and see people. We had a lot of wonderful surprises, not just foundations supporting us, but also Deepak Chopra and the Chopra Foundation will be working very closely with us to fund a lot of our various action projects around the world. So please, by all means, there'll be other chances to find out information about us, but it's your donations that make these action projects possible. So thank you all so much. We also have a podcast. This is a great way for us to communicate with the community. If you're not familiar with this, having discussions with particularly business owners and CEOs, people who are creating policies, ordinances, mandates around sustainability, getting these things passed, taking those models and then bringing them to other places that we do work around the world is precisely what we do. And that is something that a podcast, and especially long-form discussion, really lends itself to. So if you haven't checked out the official Ideas for Us podcast, please do. Just make sure it's the official one. Okay, cool. So after all, this isn't just myself or any of our team or speakers, wonderful guests tonight, just talking. This is about us interacting together. You all are armed with whiteboards and markers at your table. That is precisely what we want to do to capture this information. We're going to be photographing those boards later on, keeping that information and utilizing it for action projects. So we have a series of icebreaker questions for you all this evening, but let's start out by turning to the people that are at the table next to you. If you haven't met them before, now is your chance. We're going to take about 30 to 40 seconds for each one of these questions and kind of rapid fire through them. So first icebreaker question, discuss at your tables. Name 3 countries that you think have the least amount of air pollution in the world. Who are they? Let's see if you know. So just 3. Now, there's in the rankings, there's, of course, well, quite more than 3, but let's see what you come up with. I hear a lot of Scandinavian countries getting named in the audience. No, no. It's none. Many, in fact. It's a continent. Well, one space, McMurdo Research Station, is continuously occupied. We own that. But it's kind of like the International Space Station where you have researchers there. But countries have territory there, but no one occupies it. Correct. Okay. Let's do like maybe 10 more seconds here. Come up. Just 3 guesses. And let's see if they're on the list. Okay. So this is the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Top 10 here. So now, one thing I will say about this is someone who has been to Liberia and ridden through deadlocked traffic in Liberia, I would not necessarily agree with this, but I believe it's because more than 75% of the country is undeveloped. So that is a big part of it, which would certainly explain Australia as well, with a significant portion of it being undeveloped. So really fascinating to think about. Comes down to, well, an absence of human beings that leads to air quality. So that's certainly something for us to consider. Okay, let's see. So let's take a look at this. What are 3 contributing factors to air quality, right? We looked up different parts that have to do with air quality. What are these contributing top factors? Let's take a thought there. Air quality, a big deal these days. All right. Could be sources of mitigation, could be lack of dirt bikes in your country, could be all kinds of things. Presence of horses. Yep. Now commonly stolen out of cars. Yep. Correct. Yep. All right, let's take a look. All right, so geography, right? That was a big one that we kind of suspected before, right? Meteorology, maybe we'll hear a little bit more about that tonight. And then, of course, human sources, right? Emissions. Is it wood that they're burning? Is it coal-fired power plants, right? What is the actual fuel source that's being used? Well, geography is certainly dependent around, or the population certainly affects that aspect. So if you're like LA or Mexico City, where you're shaped like a bowl, that air pollution will kind of get trapped inside of there. So very important. In fact, that's why they build a lot of things in Sarasota for crosswinds, like nuclear bomb shelters and stuff like that, to protect in Florida because of the geography of where that is in Florida. Okay, so, well, we know our planet changes, right? We have a transforming climate. The climate is always changing, and, well, certainly it is being changed by human beings. But if you had to look at Earth's entire lifespan, when did we have the worst air quality? When do you think that would be? Was it during human beings or not? This one's a little tongue-in-cheek. We'll see how you all do on the question. All right. Those of you who might be geologists in the room or biologists, right? Of course, we think about things in deep time, right? So this one was a little bit tongue-in-cheek here, but 2.4 billion years ago, things were pretty bad. As soon as our atmosphere had formed and we had a tremendous amount of volcanic activity while outgassing, boy, you would not have wanted to be on Earth then. Probably much more like like we see in Venus today. And interestingly enough, I was speaking with a researcher from NASA this morning, and they were showing me some pictures of Mercury's outgassing of all of these different types of chemicals from deep within Mercury that then are sent off into space. And it looked almost like a comet, but you can't see that with the naked eye. But Mercury is always outgassing from the sun, scorching it. So not good. We're glad we're here on Earth. After all, this is the only known place where life exists in our solar system, and we are certainly quite lucky to be here. Okay, fantastic. So let's jump into it. We're really excited tonight to have this wonderful STAIR team from the University of Central Florida, of course, the institution that birthed ideas for us out of a dorm room back in 2008. We're very, very excited to have everyone here today. They're going to be speaking to us about air pollution. We've got a breakout coming up for you in that, and then we're going to share with you all different types of events that we have in the community that are coming up in the next few weeks for you to engage in, and also some general updates from across the movement. So thank you so much, and without further delay, let's bring up the team. Round of applause, please.
Thank you.
Of course, and then there is the remote for you, and there's a laser pointer on there if you need it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all for having us here tonight. I'm Dr. Kelly Stevens. I'm an assistant professor at the School of Public Administration at UCF. I have several other speakers here who are members of our team. We're each going to take a turn talking to you a little bit more about our project tonight, and so I'll let everyone introduce themselves when they come up to talk about this project. So we've been working on our UCF STAIR project. That's a smart and trustworthy air quality network for a few years now. By a show of hands, how many of you have heard of this project already? Okay, a bunch of you. And by a show of hands, how many of you are involved in our project? Awesome. How many of you have a sensor on your property? Wonderful, great. So we have a few people here who have sensors on their property. We have about 45 sensors in the community right now, and I'll show you a map in a little bit to show you where those are and tell you a little bit more. We have a website. I've listed the link to the website here. You can learn a little bit more about the project team and the project that we're working on. And if you want to share this information with others, this website is a great resource. So tonight we want to talk a little bit more about the project, discuss some ways to get involved, how to host a sensor, also be involved as a citizen scientist. I'll talk to you more about that in a moment and what that entails. You don't have to have a sensor on your property to be involved in this project. I want everyone to know that, so everyone can be involved in this. Then we're going to take a moment to talk a little bit about how to use the information collected from the sensors for community advocacy and how to use this data to advocate for clean air policy. We'll have a little bit of time for question and answer, and then, like discussed before, we'll have a little breakout session where you get to think through how to use this information for community advocacy. So first, this project is sponsored by the National Science Foundation. Like I mentioned, this is a grant that started in 2019. Dr. Haofei Yu, who will speak in a moment about the sensors, is the principal investigator of this project. So it's really, he's the lead of this project and has been working through. We have a very large team. We have multiple students involved. We have several partners from other institutions, Arizona State, as well as Massachusetts Lowell. The purpose of this project is to set up a low-cost air quality sensor network in Orlando. The sensors that we're providing are free of cost, but the idea is that we have these sensors that don't cost, say, $50,000, like the ones that the federal government and state and local governments use to check if our air quality is meeting federal regulations. These sensors do not determine if we're in federal compliance with air quality standards, but they are informative, and they provide information to you as citizens about what local air quality looks like. The sensors that we have are also designed to be cyber secure so that nobody can hack into and tamper with the data. We have found through research that some other low-cost air quality sensor networks that are on the market could be hacked into. And so these are also cyber secure, which is an added feature. The sensors that we have are measuring fine particulate matter, or PM2.5 for short, as well as carbon dioxide. We'll talk about those pollutants a little bit more in a moment, but fine particulate matter is a pollutant that can directly affect your health, while most of you probably know carbon dioxide is a leading contributor to climate change. And so it doesn't necessarily have direct impacts on your health, but it does lead to climate change, which does have impacts on your health. So a moment about air quality. Like I said, fine particulate matter is pollutant that can be inhaled deep inside the lungs. It's very, very tiny. 2.5 refers to the size, the diameter size of the particulate, of the particle. Sensitive populations to PM2.5 include children, the elderly, or those with heart or lung disease. They may be particularly sensitive to changes in PM2.5 levels in the ambient air. Sources of PM2.5 include fire, construction, vehicles, power plants. A lot of these things you mentioned earlier in the question about what are contributing factors to air quality. So these can all be sources of PM2.5. It is almost always present in the air. But the federal government has set rules to determine what levels are safe for us to breathe. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas pollutant that obviously contributes to global warming, and it connects to sustainability measures. And some of those sources of carbon dioxide are similar to PM2.5, including power plants, as well as vehicles and industrial processes. There are a lot of direct impacts of particulate matter on health. It can lead to difficulty breathing if PM2.5 levels are high enough. It could lead to heart attacks. It can also aggravate asthma and impact lung function. It may also lead to premature death. In 1 year alone, there's studies that show that PM2.5 exposure is believed responsible for 8.9 million premature deaths worldwide. And I was talking to Kristen earlier, it's hard to find air quality data across the world. Not every country has good air quality monitors, so it's hard to determine what these levels are in every country. But it's a major impact on health and well-being. There's also been some early work on statistical link between PM 2.5 levels and exposure and death or serious illness from COVID-19. They're finding that populations that have been exposed to PM 2.5 are more likely to suffer from serious illness and possibly death from COVID-19. Some of this work is, again, statistical. It's an early research because we've only been dealing with COVID for a couple of years now, only. But there are links that are being found and explored there. We also hypothesize further that due to COVID-19's potential long-lasting impact on lung health, that more people who have been affected by COVID-19 who may be suffering from reduced lung function while recovering from or possibly recovering from long COVID are going to be more sensitive to air quality. And so knowing what air quality is like in your community is increasingly important right now. There are equity implications of air quality as well. In the US, race and socioeconomic status are highly correlated with exposure to harmful air pollution. There's a few reasons why, but studies have found that non-white populations, especially blacks, face higher risks from particulate matter. Pollution sources tend to be localized around marginalized communities. For example, it was in the news a few years ago that members of the Griffin Park community were complaining about air quality, reduced air quality. If you're not aware of where Griffin Park is, it's situated between multiple highway corridors. There's been a lot of construction around that area with the I-4 corridor, and it was surrounded by high traffic highways. And so it's a community that may not have access to air conditioning, so they rely more on open air for air conditioning and cooling, and are more exposed to poor air quality. So this story made the Huffington Post and several local news outlets. There isn't an air quality monitor in that area to say for sure what air quality is like there at this time. So that's part of what we hope to answer with our sensor network. We have heard multiple concerns about air quality in the community so far. Part of our project is talking to people and hearing what are your concerns about air quality. There's been concerns mentioned about construction, a lot of development in downtown, about highways. There's been construction on highways, but there's a lot of traffic. Sometimes traffic is rerouted through neighborhoods when the highway is closed and being worked on. There's concerns about some of the industrial outlets that we have here, TG Lee, for example, the municipal airport, as well as OUC. So we are hearing that there are concerns. The goals of our project are to develop this low-cost air quality sensor network that's reliable and cyber secure. Because these are lower-cost instruments, we have to do a lot of work to make sure that they are working correctly, that they are reliable, that what they're reporting is accurate. We want to provide a denser network of air quality measurements so that we know what air quality is like in your community versus just at the county level. We want to evaluate the impact of our air quality network on citizen efficacy and trust in government. We're curious if you have this source of data and you're more aware of what your local air quality conditions are, does that change how you view your relationship with the government? We also are providing training on local air quality and how to interpret air quality measurements. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And we're working with citizens on how to use air quality and for advocacy and to develop action plans and to hopefully improve equitable access to air quality. Oh, I should not forget to mention, we have a number of wonderful partnerships in this project too. It has taken a few years to develop Many of these, but there's members of some of these organizations here, including Ideas for Us, First Unitarian Church, League of Women Voters of Orange County. We are working directly with the City of Orlando, Orange County Government, the Environmental Protection Division, National Coalition of Black Women, and we also have a sensor up at Mead Botanical Garden if you've been there before. So a few other partnerships I didn't get to fit on there, but we are very fortunate to have wonderful support from the community to work on this project. We can't do this alone. Real quick, gotta mention what does air quality look like in Central Florida? So the map on the left shows where our regulatory monitors are in the state. The ones that measure fine particulate matter. We have over 100 federally regulated monitors in the state, but only, I don't know how many this is, it's less than 100, measure fine particulate matter. There's, the other main pollutant that they measure is ozone. So we're focusing just on PM 2.5 monitors in the state. And you'll notice that in Central Florida, we just have a handful of monitors here that are telling us what PM 2.5 levels are. Go ahead. No, so I'm sorry. In the next slide, I'll show you what our sensors are. These are the $50,000 sensors that the federal government has mandated that we have in certain locations. The state and local governments operate them. So they're very expensive. And these are showing that air quality is overall pretty good. The graphs on the right show ozone and particulate matter concentrations at some of these monitors in Central Florida. The red dashed lines show what the federal air quality standards are. And you'll see that for the most part, our air quality has been below federal regulatory standards. Polk County is was close to the standard for ozone. It has since come down. We're pretty close on ozone in a lot of locations, but for fine particulate matter, we're below the standard. So that indicates the air quality is good. Usually these are annual averages. So it's still possible that on a certain day, a certain time, a certain location may experience levels that are above the standard. And it could be unhealthy to be outside, especially for sensitive populations. If you want more information on these air quality monitors, I have included the links to those data sets. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Haofei Yu to talk a little bit about how the sensors work.
Hi, so, my name is Haofei Yu. I'm an assistant professor of environmental engineering at UCF. So I see a few people here. First, I just want to quickly, thanks Kelly for the introduction. So the reason why we do this project, the first thing is because, as you can see from the slides, in the Central Florida region, there isn't a lot of monitors. One biggest reason is because they're so expensive. And they need AC shelters, specialized training personnel to do maintenance and everything. So we can't afford to put a lot of the problem. But the problem is that, for example, in the entire Orange County, we have two locations. You cannot cover a lot of potential hotspots. If you see such as 408, I-4, you have so much traffic, but you cannot put monitor there because it's just too expensive. So one of our purposes where we're going to blanket the entire city with monitors. We want to see if we can capture the hotspot. That give us a better idea what the quality looks like. So this is what our monitor looks like. Just want to say that all the boards here are designed by the student at UCF. Another purpose of this project is student engagement, so that we want students to learn all the different processes. So that's another reason why it takes so long, but it's worth it. So yeah, so the monitor we made cost us around $400 in parts. So compared to like say 36,000, it's much cheaper. So we use some very low cost sensors, such as we have some of the here is that for particles we use a plant tower. This is the teeny particle sensors. So you use laser scattering. So you use laser to shoot light. They have a teeny fan draw the air in, then shoot laser, then you count how many particles are there. So we have a Sensera CO2 sensor. So we use infrared light to measure absorption, to basically give you a rough idea of CO2 concentrations. We have 3 particle sensors over here because they are low cost. They cost me about $15 each compared to 36,000. But the problem is they are so low cost. Sometimes they give us false highs and false lows. So we have 3, just to make sure that sometimes if one sensor is not behaving, we have 2 others to cross-check to make sure we can trust the data. Okay. So this is our current network. We have 45 installed. This is the current location. Unfortunately, we have to, some of you guys already know, we have to replace, basically upgrade all of them. One reason is because, for someone who live in Florida for a long time, you would expect me to understand, but apparently Florida has multiple days of cloudy days without any sunlight, and our sensor is powered by solar panels. So technically, it's supposed to last 2 days. When we design this, it's supposed to last 2 days in the dark with no sunlight at all. But we have like 4 days of no sunlight earlier this year, and all our sensors are dead. That's a problem. Now you can see the bigger box over there. That's a new battery. It's much, much bigger. So right now it should last for like a whole week without any sunlight. So that's one of the reasons we're updating everything, because we don't want our sensor just died in the middle, you didn't get any data. So we are replacing them right now. So unfortunately, because the COVID supply chain is just a little bit hectic, we are still waiting for the new batteries to come in. So I know, it's been a long time, but we are trying to get everything to push as fast as possible. So we have about 10 sensors operating. We were able to buy a few battery, but the vast majority, we still cannot get it. So this is, our internal website, what it looks like, which I'm definitely going to open it up to you guys, of course, later. What you're going to see is basically when you have the link, this is the internal website. You can see a Google map, and on there you can see the different the sensor location. You see the measurement, so different color corresponding to different pollution levels. You see a yellow, which means it's slightly bad. You see green is generally good. So what we've seen so far is most of the time it's pretty good, but sometimes you do see a lot of yellows. So from here, although generally it's pretty clean, you do have some pollution days. And you can see the different measurement throughout time. You can look at the history. You can see there are 3 sensors. Sometimes they measure different numbers. They're close, but sometimes it's a little bit different. So if you're interested, so as Kelly mentioned, do let us know, and we provide this completely free of charge. What we need is your permission to get on your property, so we can find the location. Ideally, it's sunlit locations. We're going to install it. If we cannot find location, we'll install a pole, and basically it's just we install 3 feet long pole base, and then we hammer the pole base into the ground, and we install steel pole on top, 8 feet, so we can hang the sensor on top. Sometimes we can hang the sensor onto a fence if you feel like it is not interfering with your daily life. If you want, we can also have a sign, a backyard sign, yard sign stick into place. So the whole process is, if you're interested, send us email. So Alchin and I will be in contact. So we have to have a legal agreement in place. Unfortunately, we have to do everything by the book. So it's not saying like you are responsible for anything. You don't. So let's say if the sensor got stolen, damaged, don't worry about it. You're not responsible at all. It's just something we have to do. So if we need to install a pole, we need to call 811 just to come by and check if there's nothing underground, such as a gas pipeline, something like that. So, okay, so I guess I'll hand it to you. All right.
Thanks so much. Let me just catch up. My colleagues were not turning the pages. So part of what this project is doing is not only measuring the quality of air through this innovative sensor network, but we are working to empower the residents of Orange County and the city of Orlando to become citizen scientists. Is this a phrase that you know? citizen scientist a little bit. So the idea of a citizen scientist is someone who is not expertly trained with a degree in whatever, and where the degree is required to do a data analysis and collect data and report on data and make recommendations using the data, and nobody will listen to you if you don't have a PhD on the other side of your name. The citizen scientist is someone who is given the power of science through the experience of living, basically, right? You are given the power of data, given the power of collecting your own data, given the power to interpret your data and to use your data to advocate for some meaningful change in your community. This is the idea of the citizen scientist. And so we are actively recruiting, as my colleagues said, anybody who wants to host a sensor, or if you do not want a sensor on your property, or maybe you rent property or live in an apartment and you don't have the space for a sensor on your property, but you want to have access to the data in your neighborhood, you can be a citizen scientist with this project. We just ask for a couple of things. One, you will agree to sit for an interview with me or members of my team. A short interview, harmless, painless. It can be virtual, it could be in person. That's entirely up to you. Second, to access the data that we will make available to you through the sensor network. And to participate in a training program, which right now is fully online. It was initially designed pre-COVID when we started this project in person. So we moved online, but maybe we'll shift back in the other direction as things start to open up a little bit more. But to participate in a training program so that you're not just looking at all of the air quality data and asking, what do I do with this now? We give you the tools to interpret, we give you the tools to mobilize your neighbors, your friends, your family, your colleagues, and we give you the tools to communicate with elected officials. So you do all of that, you'll get $100 in a form of a gift card to participate and be a citizen scientist with us. So this is a screenshot of the online training program that we have developed. It's internal to the University of Central Florida, which means if you want to be a citizen scientist with us, you provide us your email address. We will get you a UCF ID if you do not have one already through as a student or other individual who might be affiliated with the university. And we will put you into the web courses, the online training platform. It will take about 2 hours to walk through the entire training, self-paced, and there are discussion boards online. You can talk to each other, talk to our team, ask any question that you want in order to be effective as a citizen scientist. Now, part of the equation, as I mentioned, is to become not only someone who can interpret the data, but to use the data effectively to make meaningful change in the community, to become an effective advocate using the data. Now, Clayton, your question at the beginning inspired me about when was the worst air quality on Earth, right? What was it, 2.4 billion years ago, something like that? Something, okay. That reminded me of research that was conducted a few years ago by colleagues at the University of Florida and some other places where they were able to detect the merger of two black holes. Right? This is quite an amazing thing, right? The merger of two black holes. And what they basically said, what they concluded was that in order to measure these two black holes in the universe coming together, they needed such fine instruments that they can't see it with a normal telescope, basically, right? You need just a really fine tool, a very precise instrument. And the researcher at University of Florida compared it to putting your thumbs together. So if you can join me for a minute, put your thumbs up, put your thumbs as close as you can together and look through your thumbs. What do you see? Not much, right? You don't see very much at all, right? And it's an amazing idea, and I actually use this as a metaphor for a lot of civic engagement activity in our communities. If we tend to look asking how healthy are we as a society in terms of our civic engagement, right? We will look at what percentage of our citizens are voting, what percentage are volunteering, what percentage are rallying on the streets, what percentage are boycotting, what percentage are boycotting, whatever it is. We're looking at these big picture items, but the truth is a lot of advocacy work and citizen impact work on issues like air quality happen like this. You have to look really closely to see the small efforts, the small movements, the small activities that collectively rise up to make a collective impact in the community. And that is part of what it is to be an advocate, to be a citizen scientist, to change your behavior in small ways that can be that ripple in the lake, as we can imagine, and we hear the metaphor spoken quite often. This is a list of advocacy actions or categories that was developed by former Florida Governor and U.S. Senator Bob Graham in his book, which I recommend to you, America, the Owner's Manual. It's a short book. It's about the size of a manual for your automobile. You can keep it in your glove box if you want, in your car. Basically, he wrote the book in order to, as he said, help ensure citizens know how to make a difference with their elected officials and with their government. What he observed was that citizens typically don't know who to go to when they have a problem. He spent some time when he was a state legislator with going to some high schools and other educational facilities and taking town hall style questions from people. And there was he recalled an example of a group of high school kids who stood up and asked, what can we do about the really bad pizza served in the school cafeteria? And this is a member of the state legislature, right? And he said, why are you asking me? I have no power over, as a member of the state legislature, the food that's served in your cafeteria. Who else have you gone to? Well, we've gone to the sheriff, we've gone to the mayor, we've gone to these people. Well, none of these people have anything to do. So he wrote this book in order to help citizens be really targeted and focused in their advocacy. Define the problem. What it is that do you want to do? Gather information to sway decision makers. Identify who can help fix the problem. Gauge and build support for your cause. Persuade decision makers. Use the calendar, meaning things happen in Tallahassee or in Orlando or in Orange County, or at whatever level of government, they happen on a calendar. When do you get an item on agenda? When do you have to testify? When do you have to petition to get something noticed? These are the kinds of questions that you have to ask. Engage the media, preserve victory, learn from defeat. These are the main categories. If I can ask Kelly to distribute these checklists, which I'll come back to here in a minute. But I developed a checklist that is a variation on Bob Graham's advocacy suggestions. And I think consistent with this idea of the citizen scientist, I framed the checklist categories by different kinds of intelligence that you have to apply to be an effective advocate, to be an effective citizen scientist. The first is to define your problem and be inclusive in doing so. Use clear language. State your concern, use language that is understandable and accessible to the diversity of people in your neighborhood and in your community. Ask yourself if any group is being excluded as you frame the issue. Gather information to sway decision makers. Be data intelligent. This is what our big contribution is as a project. Right? We're giving you the air quality data. We're giving you the air quality data that you can successfully and accurately interpret to show decision makers and neighbors and colleagues and others who are living, working, playing, praying in your neighborhood, people all around you, that there is in fact a problem. Be data intelligent. Third category, this should say be politically intelligent, not political intelligent. Be politically intelligent. This is Bob Graham's pizza example. Know who is responsible for addressing the issue. Third, be socially intelligent. Who is in your neighborhood? Do you know your neighbors? And I have stories to tell another time about how many of us don't know our neighbors. I would ask you, but I would suspect it's similar to what we see around the country. If I say, how many of you know the name of your neighbor? Probably not many. right? That's the situation. Be socially intelligent. Know your neighbors, know who they are, know what their interests are, know who might suffer from poor air quality in your neighborhood when you get to know them. And then last, be relationally intelligent. Build your network with people who you know can be activated to support your cause. This is just a part one of an advocacy checklist to lay the foundation before you take that very first step of actually going to an elected official or a decision maker. This is laying the groundwork before you get started. Now, we want to help you do that. If you sign up as a citizen scientist in this project, you will join a community of other citizen scientists, those who are hosting sensors and those who are not, but who have joined in the project. In approximately January of 2023, we will convene all of the citizen scientists who have signed on to the project into a conversation or a set of conversations about how can you build an advocacy plan using a checklist like this to make a difference in Orlando and the surrounding area when it comes to air quality. And we'll work with you. Develop a good plan collectively. We'll provide some pilot money, $10,000, that's pretty good pilot money, $10,000 to begin to implement your advocacy plan and begin those first steps to making a difference using the data that we're providing through the STAIR network. That is the ask and the challenge that we have. And so to get involved, you can email us at airquality@ucf.edu. Tell us that you want to be a citizen scientist. We'll get you signed up. If you want to host a sensor, we still have more to go around. Tell us you want to do that. We'll get you set up. We'll get you set up on the UCF system to enter the training modules, and we'll go from there. Now, we do have an interactive exercise, but I think if we have time, we'll pause for questions for the whole team, and then we'll give you a chance to practice some of what we've been talking about. Thank you. Questions? Yes.
You might have already said this, but who's funding the project, and what kind of companies or entities are interested in having this science take place?
Sure. Well, this research is funded by the National Science Foundation, which is the U.S. federal agency. They fund all manner of scientific enterprises in social sciences and engineering and computer sciences across the board. So they're the funder. And what was the second part of your question?
What kind of entities are interested in this information or showing that they want this data?
Yeah. Well, what kind of entities are interested in receiving these air quality data? And feel free to jump in, but my first response is the people, folks who live in the neighborhood who have concerns about the construction site going in next door or the traffic flows that are going by their neighborhood. So this is one. We were inspired by that story from Griffith Park, Griffin, I was right the first time. Okay, Griffin Park. Because we know that there are folks who don't have access to the data they need to make a compelling argument. And we have friends for this project, all the partners that were identified on the slide from Kelly, City of Orlando, Orange County Environmental Division, all of the others that are listed are wanting to see what we provide through these data. If we did not have support from the city or the county, we would not be able to do what we're doing. We've been working on a contract with City of Orlando to hang some of these sensors on city property. We're working with some other entities to do similar. So there's a lot of interest in government, in nonprofit, Unitarian Church was mentioned, neighborhood associations, and again, I'll just come back to we the people, if I may, because that is where it starts, and that's where we see I think the biggest groundswell of interest. In the back, yeah.
So growing up, we used to have to get the car inspected all over Florida, and we don't have to anymore. Is there a chance that your data will help bring that back?
As someone who grew up in New York, I appreciated the required inspection of cars, who knows? We can't predict that, but if you have a group of citizens who become educated about air quality and aware of the data on air quality and how what we're experiencing and living on a daily basis affects lives, livelihoods, health, well-being, then any policy change is possible. Absolutely. Something like that would require a lot of work. That wouldn't be a short-term proposition, but maybe if you get the groundswell, but it wouldn't necessarily be carried from City of Orlando alone. That's something that you work statewide to get something like that, and there are a lot of politics and political interest on that question. But who knows? You never. I would never say no to an idea for an advocacy campaign. But any successful use of data with mobilized, smart, connected citizens is you have a better chance of moving that kind of policy than otherwise.
Just as an addendum, I guess this only applies to gas vehicles.
Yeah, sure. Yes, in the red in the back, yeah. Yeah.
So do you have any examples of when we have this data, right, we're actually able to influence policy here in Florida? Because I work for Orange County, and I see environmental pollution that's egregious, that's past the point of like cancerous in our water quality and other things. And we have the data. We've had the data for a long time. What can we do with that data outside of just organizing, raising money, and suing?
So outside of air quality, as we look at other data that are available on any pollutant in water or air or anything else, do I have any, and I'll pose this to my colleagues, any examples of how data have successfully, from Florida? No, not from Florida. I can think of examples from South Carolina and some other states where communities have successfully organized using a variety of federal policy levers and state policy levers in order to make some meaningful impacts. The city of, I'm going to blank on the name of the city, but there's one well-known case of a city that was an old brownfield that was where all kinds of toxins in the groundwater that were killing the residents. But it took, in that case, it was one resident who was able to mobilize, use data, organize, have meetings, but it took years in order to move an agenda forward where change was actually implemented and improvements were made in the community without displacing the residents either, and then that's important. Spartanburg, South Carolina, is the example. But I can't, I'll have to look to see if there are, and if other, Clayton, I don't know if you have any examples from Florida, but.
Not from Florida. I mean, there's a famous example of MacArthur Foundation doing a highlight for MacArthur Genius Award.
Can't hear you, Clay.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'll go back.
I know there's a MacArthur Genius Award that was given in a study around cars and pollution and infant premature births, and how there was a study where there were cars slowing down to pay a toll at a toll road. When that was turned into one of those electronic passes where cars didn't have to stop near this neighborhood that was just on the other side of a partition from the highway, premature births went down like 9% in that community. That just from having the cars slow down to pay caused enough heavy metals or whatever it is that people were actually having premature births that were living right there. Now, whether or not this can fly in Florida, who knows? I was actually just about to ask a question as well. Has air quality been tied to property values, as far as you know? Because in Florida here, money talks, and real estate, besides tourism, is probably our #1 business. If you all come out with a map of air quality across the county, let's just say Orange, but potentially other counties too, and find a way to equate that with maybe a property value layover, is that something that you've ever seen academically, that if you're living near a place that is very low air quality, does this affect property values?
Do you know, Kelly? I was going to say it's an interesting question, but from a statistical perspective, it would be hard to disentangle the low socioeconomic neighborhoods and property values and air quality. It's all sort of mixed in.
It's been attempted, and there's probably some studies out there. I don't know them very well, but I'd be happy to look at it tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think about how, if there could be a connection even with our own, local coal-fired power plant here, if the coal ash could be connected to residue in cadaver lungs or something like that of people who've passed away from lung cancer in the community, if there could be some type of connection there. I'm ignorant to whether or not there's been a study that can tie point source pollution from a power plant directly to an individual.
Come, Haofei?
Yeah, here, you, okay, all right.
So we got some questions before. So as you know, Avalon Park near the power plant has a few leukemia kids, and they are very concerned. So they actually, oh, okay. So we were talking about Avalon Park, the community near the power plant. They have some cancer cases. They are very concerned. But it's difficult. So, if we are proposing a health study like that, it's going to take a long time. And we have to do extensive measurement, not using low-cost ones. You have to use high precision, like regulatory grade equipment. It is possible, but it's going to take a long time for that.
Yeah, I'll just make the comment, free market can do a lot of things. I would look at reaching out to real estate websites like Zillow and getting them to display air quality as a factor on their listings of real estate. It may not affect the price, but just having it listed can have a tremendous effect. So let's let the free market decide. Just a thought. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Also, going back to the question a little bit about the sharing data leading to actions. So with regard to air quality, there are some studies in California. So there are a study led by this guy called Paul English. He created one of the sensor network for California and revealed there are some huge disparities in air pollution in Southern California. And you may heard that there is a Assembly Bill 617 just passed in California. They invested several $100 billion to clean up those worst communities and to basically enhance the air quality monitoring in many communities, especially underserved communities in California. So it does lead to actions. Yeah.
Could you confirm for me whether we have a third very expensive, high-quality monitor, happens to be located in downtown and has not been operating for quite a while? Can you confirm that?
Yes. So what happened with that one is a little bit complicated because that one is supposed to be, there are different types of regulatory monitors. So there are some monitors designed to represent the population level exposures. That one is supposedly for a near road, so basically capture near road high level concentrations. But because of construction, they have been shutting down for a long time. I'm not sure if they are back. I don't think they're going to be back for a long time, maybe. Hey.
Question about jet fuel. I had asked this a while back. Is there any way we can detect jet fuel in the monitoring? Because I live right by the airport downtown, and early morning you can't go out without choking with the APUs running on the rich people's planes.
Yes. So jet fuel is a little bit tricky because it's different. So our monitor measures PM 2.5. The sensor we use detect the size range I will trust is between 0.3 to 4 microns. So beyond that range, I don't trust data because the laser is just too cheap. You don't expect much from $10 laser.
Is jet fuel more fine particle? Is J4
Yes.
is what they burn most likely?
Jet fuel, there are several things. One is
Kerosene
ultra fine,
derivative.
that below 0.1 micron. You can't use a laser because that's too small. You have to use specialized equipment, and that thing doesn't come in cheap. I don't have it actually. We don't have it right now.
Should we worry about if you can't breathe real good? Is that a problem, or is that just an
It's
issue?
definitely a problem. Yes.
I mean,
It's definitely a problem.
I mean, okay. The other question is, and I'm not sure if this is a rule or not, I thought the EPA at one point had an air rule about CO2 levels and trying to lower them by reducing the sprawl of cars. So you get hit as a community if your CO2 levels were rising because of the sprawl. And that, I thought that was in the 90s or so, but I'm not sure if that rule existed or not. Is there a rule about CO2 levels relating to urban sprawl? Or
I'm not aware of regulatory regulations on CO2. Maybe you.
it's a legal question with environmental.
So we only have the motor vehicle standards as a CO2 for transportation sector. We have no federal policies for electricity sector. So no, and there's no federal CO2 policies besides transportation, motor vehicle standards. So there's nothing. There hasn't been anything before.
Okay.
To the question about vehicle testing, ozone used to be a problem in the 1990s here in Florida because the standard was different. It was a 1-hour standard. Now it's an 8-hour averaging standard. And so areas like Miami and Pensacola had problems with the 1-hour standard format, but as they increased the averaging time, for various reasons, there's scientific boards that review the standards and how they're, what the levels are and what the averaging should be, and they determined that 8 hours is sufficient to measure if it's affecting ambient health. But when the standard changes, it may make it look like air quality has gotten worse, but really the standard has been lowered. So things were different. The standards were different in the 1990s. So our regulations were also different in the 1990s. I hope that helps.
So I've heard some really terrible stories from other environmentalists about, for example, a town, a majority black town where they were burning trash, and low-income town, majority black, they were burning trash, and people were having these terrible health effects, and it's still going on from what I was told. How would you approach getting sensors out to a community that may not have the funding for that sort of thing? And how would you approach gathering data to show that this is indeed a problem, and maybe even have data that shows that it's a legal problem? Because if there's a standard, you're talking about standards for vehicles, but maybe if I'm not sure if there is just a regular standard for particulate matter in general, I feel like you could be able to show that the particulate matter is above that standard, and thus take legal action against people who are burning trash, like a company that's burning trash. So how would that be approached?
That's a great question, and I think this is something all of us can answer. I'll just approach, and I remember something you said early on. Whenever you can smell something in the air, particulates are in the air, right? Anytime you smell, when you make toast in the morning, you smell that the toaster's working. That's because there's particulates in the air from that action. So yeah, burning garbage definitely contributes to PM 2.5. The sensors that we have, We are working closely with Orange County. We're sharing the data with them. They're the local government that runs the monitors here in Orange County. We are sharing the data with them. They're going to see it, and they're using this. I can't speak for them, but they are going to use this to make decisions about programs that they offer and possibly considerations about where they put monitors in the future. You know, things change in the federal government. Sometimes we have more stringent standards because, you know, political wave and how things change. There's times when the EPA is looking to extend the federal monitoring network and will provide more funding to extend those really expensive monitors. And so having data from our sensor network could help influence Orange County and the recommendations that they make about where monitors should go in the future.
Okay.
However, the data that we collect can't be, I don't think it's legally, you know, going to have enough pull
Right.
to sue anybody, but I would hope that it would be used to make regulatory decisions.
Yeah. Thank you.
I know it's about 8 o'clock. We'll take one more question, and then maybe we can move on to the breakout.
Just curious,
activity.
is there ever a time that you think you get to the point where there's too many sensors?
Yes. So that's a great question. So, you know, we notice that sometimes we install sensor like one block, you know, just one block away, and we found the concentration is basically the same. So that is the point that maybe just too dense. So we only have like a few, less than a handful actually, in that state. But at that time, right now, there's not a big problem.
Yeah, because I could see very easily product manufacturers latching on to this type of technology and incorporating it into their product offerings as well. So I was wondering, do they need to be with your system, or if they're measuring the same thing, the PM 2.5 and the CO2, and then they can provide you additional data from that point, or would it require your particular unit to acquire that data?
That's a wonderful question. So right now, commercially, there are many commercial air quality monitors on the market that can do exactly the same thing our monitor does. So the thing we design our monitor is essentially use it as a platform. So we want to collect high accuracy data. So that's why we have 3 in there. We want to make sure there's no false high, no false low. We want to know the real level. So there are many other aspects of the project. For example, later you're going to see us tolling our mobile lab. You're going to see a white box roaming around Orlando, measuring air quality. We also have like the student involvement. We have a lot of students working on this project. So our monitor is designed for a different purpose. So for commercial product, we don't need so much stuff. We don't need cybersecurity. We don't need the research portion. We don't need student engagement. All we need is something that does the work. That's it. That actually costs much less. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you. All right.
All right. So real quick, I know, 8:15, so we have about 10 minutes left or so. Let's take a few minutes and consider this scenario and come up with an action plan using the advocacy checklist that Tom created and this scenario. The scenario is there's an air quality sensor in your neighborhood, and since some construction has begun around where this peak, this uptick in emissions happens, you're seeing that PM levels have increased. There's 3, like Haofei has mentioned, there's 3 sensors in your unit, and all 3 of them are indicating that there has been an uptick in particulate emissions since construction began nearby. What do you do with this information? So take, I don't know if 5 minutes is enough time, but let's do 10 minutes, take 10 minutes, come up with this advocacy plan, and also think what information to you would be most useful in an app or whatever resource, website we provide with this air quality sensor data. We're designing the app now. It's a dynamic process. We'd like to hear from you what information would be useful to you. So let's take a moment within your groups, at your tables, come up with this action plan.
In a limited time, I suggest you focus on the category of be socially intelligent.
Be socially intelligent.
So if a representative from every table come up and talk about your ideas, if you have any to share.
So for the first question, our group thought that we would need hourly sensor data preferably so that we could show that the particulate matter spikes corresponded with the start of construction during the day. And that way we could show using data that the construction was really linked to the particulate matter issue. For the second question, we said that we should create a data visualization of the particulate spike and hand it out to neighbors by knocking on doors, and also letting people know on Nextdoor, like a social website for neighborhoods. One idea we had to organize and to get people to be concerned about the air quality was to organize about air quality to get people together to plant trees and then talk about air quality while there. And we also thought that we could create a petition drive to get people involved. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Other ideas? Yep. Oh, I see fingers being pointed at someone. Okay.
Well, I kind of feel like our group cheated because I'm a civil engineer and I have a stormwater management inspection certification. So I know that if this was construction and there was particulate matter, there's a related permit that they would be violating, and you have to display permits out in front of the construction site, so it would be really easy to just flip it up, get the permit number, and call the number that's right there and say they're violating it. Ta-da!
Hey, that's great. That's useful information. Thank you. That's
Anyway.
not cheating. That's all right.
So for the first question, consider what information would be most useful on the app. We have contain information on the scale and what is good and what is bad in layman's terms, kind of, with obviously having the middle line, be the federal line, but, have some sort of details perhaps on, what this can mean for people. Obviously having graphs, a map of your location. I'm sure you guys are going to have that in there. Activity with data, what potential sources are there for the pollution. Let me see. Oh yeah, so we were thinking about having profiles for people to have, socially, like inside of the app. So if I had the app, it would say Alex Lopez, and it would contain all of the, my information, where I live, and perhaps whatever I want to disclose. Maybe that day I'm having, I notice that there is, pollution in my area. I can put that in there and, have that be something with the app's, ability to say, okay, 6 people in your area have been noticing respiratory issues. Or, even deeper than that, you can see perhaps data with, the health industry, and perhaps have like an increase in, some sort of respiratory issues, asthma, connected with the, the information that's out there in the health industry. And we also said something about next door, syncing that information kind of thing. All right, and so number 2, with the community action plan, we said having, using the app, videos, handouts, and social media, using layman's terms, obviously trying to make sure that everybody knows what we're talking about, and, make it easy for change to be made. Making sure there's no political bias behind these types of things. A lot of people think that, environmental issues are, certain person's political bias, and it's like, it really has nothing to do with any of that. Clay was just saying that environment, kids, and health is 3 things that should have no, everybody should be together on. What was that? Yes, one can dream, indeed. Let's see if any of this other stuff. Yeah, obviously letter writing campaigns, transparency through the data, public polls, and petition platform connections. So I was just thinking about having in terms of how we communicate with the government, I just feel like, we know this, but I feel like it should change the way we can communicate with, we call our officials, we can email them, and they're just getting these things, but I don't understand why we have all this technology on our phones and there's no governmental app where we can all just say, hey, I don't want there to be pollution. Let me agree with that, right? So, I mean, how easy? This is the government. I don't know. I feel like that should be easy enough, for us to have some sort of voice. I mean, we are voting for people, whenever we should be voting for our ideals, in my opinion. And yeah, it should be easy. That's all I'm saying. An app to where you say, hey, yes, I don't want this to happen. That's all I'm saying.
Great, thank you.
This. Right now, we don't have a step within the development review process where we are looking at environmental hazards as we're approving developments. And it really should be a stipulation, just like it is right now when we're getting ready to approve a luxury apartment complex. we'll look at how many kids are in the schools. Are the schools overcrowded? We do evaluations about some slight connectivity to other amenities like a grocery store, but we really aren't looking at, well, what's the air quality there? So maybe developing a GIS layer so that can be accessible to local governments that actually want to use that when they're doing the evaluation of the development review. I would love to see that for everything from water and even just access to water. I don't think we even really know how much water's in our aquifer. And doing an analysis of other environmental factors, because the water's also going to be polluted if your air's polluted, and creating layers for that.
Yes, great point. I will mention for potential air pollutants or polluters, they do have to apply for a permit, and they do look at what air quality is in the area and what the contribution will be by that new source. But you have to be over a certain level to trigger that, to require an air quality permit. And so I think what you're saying is some of these developments are not getting those environmental permits because they're not hitting those targets, but they are still contributing to air quality. Right. Okay, thank you. This is a great point.
I'm gonna make a note and then I'm gonna add to her. A note, permit is a permit to pollute. It's not to protect, it's pollute. So everyone has to remember that. This is not, I'm being a good guy. It's just, I'm getting a permit to destroy something, your lungs or land. To add to her statement, and this happened 2 BCCs ago, I believe, I had talked about the concept of adding additional, of when a new development comes in, there should be a greenhouse gas analysis and how much that development will cause. And that will impact stuff like the issue that we have out in the grow in those areas where they're pretty far out. And those people, where are they going to work? Where are they going to shop? And do the basic engineering analysis of it for everyone. Now, will it be perfect? No, but over the trending of looking over many developments, there will start being trend data that can be looked at. It's like Green Bird Atlas data. All right, so that was one of my things that we're doing all these developments. We have no clue that like Buddy Dyer is pushing out the Deseret and all those properties and Lake Nona. Those properties are contributing a lot more pollution than redevelopment of downtown where you go up 14 or 24 stories. So the carbon loading for those, and this goes back to my driving problem, is we're developing places that are guaranteed to cause more CO2 and other bad things going in the atmosphere. We're guaranteeing it. So you can't talk out one side of your mouth saying, hey, we're going to do great stuff and we're going to put a solar panel up. Meanwhile, we put this development 35 miles, like Nona, from downtown Orlando.
Well, let me.
I just point out the split oak with the new highway going through it. Right. That's not going to help us. It's going to help future development, future citizens. Why are we worrying about future citizens so much? We don't have a problem about people living here.
All right, all excellent points raised. I just want to thank you on behalf of our team for having us out here tonight and sharing all your wonderful ideas with us. Thank you, and let me turn it back over to Ideas for Us.
Thank you guys so much. This was truly enlightening, and it's really exciting to see all the research just going behind this stuff, and I'm excited to actually use your research to make a change in our community. And thank you all so much for contributing. I think this was a really excellent exchange of ideas and the conversations. I'm really inspired and excited about the conversations we had today. So I'd really love to kind of keep this energy going and keep up the excitement with some of the upcoming events that we have. We have some really cool stuff going through the summer. The heat does not stop us. We are still going to be enjoying the beach. Next weekend, we have a beach cleanup with Siemens Gamesa employees, but also open to the community. I'll have fruits. I'll promise some watermelon, some cold water, some shade, and we'll be cleaning up the beach over at Cocoa Beach. So it's going to be a beautiful day. Please come out for that, and you can sign up, and I'll give you more information about parking. And then we have a community pollinator garden over in Pine Hills. This is a really exciting project because it's on this road that is very polluted and doesn't have a lot of plant coverage. So we found a little tiny square. Actually, this group called Seeding Pine Hills is doing it with us, and they found a tiny little corner next to a mechanic, which is ironic, and they own the property, and they're allowing us to completely convert that into a pollinator sanctuary. This is going to be an ongoing project, but we're going to start out by clearing out the grass. That's happening this weekend, and then that weekend we're going to be planting a bunch of native pollinator flowers and grasses and shrubs. That's just going
going to make it a beautiful sanctuary in that area. And then we're doing a fruit tree planting at the Hindu temple later this month. That's going to be a really cool extension of this project that Caroline started with a pollinator garden over there. And then next month we're going to be doing a shoreline restoration project. So lots of amazing things going on. It's going to be a really fun event. And then in June, we're doing a native tree planting at Johns Lake Nature Preserve. So this is going to be a pretty big tree planting, so I'm going to need a lot of hands on deck, which is why I'm saying it now, even though it's next month. We're going to be planting cypress trees and bay trees along the river to, help sequester pollutants, just beautify the area. So that's going to be a really fun opportunity. So please sign up for any of these that you're interested in. UCF volunteers, everybody volunteers. Before we do this, I didn't have a slide for this yet, but I would really love to invite you all to next month's Hive. It's going to be about public transit, which is a conversation that we desperately need to have with my friends over there at Central Florida for Public Transit. That's going to be a really amazing conversation, so please come out for that. And now, we don't have a ton of time, but if anybody would like to come up for the bike rack to talk about any of your organizations that you're participating in, we'd love to give you a second to shout yourself out so that we can continue to support each other in these community groups.
Yeah, we have a very first meeting of a brand new group here in town. It's called the Interfaith Environmental Alliance of Central Florida. If you'd like more information, I'd be glad to share it with you. I think we've got lots of exciting opportunities. So come May 15th.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Okay, so everybody, this is the most important year for election season of our entire lives, especially if you're under the age of 40. We have to back people who will not take fossil fuel money, who will not take big developer money. And for that reason, I have several candidates that are just trying to get on the ballot who need petitions signed. All of them have promised to commit to not take fossil fuel money, developer money, private prison money. And for that reason, I'm trying to help them get on the ballot. So please sign petitions, take some, you can mail them in, and come and see me if you want to learn more about these amazing candidates. Yes.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much to our hosts at the Center for Health and Wellbeing. We love you guys. This is such a beautiful space. Truly, truly honored to be able to host this here. We're so thankful for you guys. They have a lot of really cool programming, different events. Today, Caroline put a thing on, she did herbs and pollinators, so many things. Come on.
Get a survey to your emails. Please fill it out. It takes 2 minutes. It really helps us. That if you say how great these environmental programs are, I can bring even more here. You can suggest speakers to me. If you want to come up and talk to me afterwards, I'm always looking for new program hosts. So thank you. Sorry.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So please follow them on social media because they have a lot of really amazing, diverse programming. And thank you all seriously so much for coming out today. This was an amazing Hive, and it's thanks to all of you and the energy that you brought. An excellent job to our speakers. Thank you guys so much. If you guys want to participate in the citizen science, talk to them. Grab some cookies. Follow us on social media. We have QR codes in the back, and thank you all so much for coming.